Hello and welcome to the Pantheon. My name's Hydo and I'm going to be your guide through this wonderful thing that we have in front of us. It's Kroxa. What a magnificent beast he is. We're going to be having a look at the 5 best cards that I think are in this deck. So without further ado, let's go ahead. Kroxa, Titan of Death's Hunger, is a 2-mana 6/6. Not exactly a stat line you see all that often. Absolutely fantastic, but there are a couple of things that, a couple of caveats to the fact that he's massive. When Kroxa enters the battlefield, sacrifice it unless it escaped. Whenever Kroxa enters the battlefield or attacks, each opponent discards a card, then each opponent who didn't discard a non-land card this way loses 3 life. This is really cool. Cares about both sacrifice and our opponent's discarding cards. We can really build a nice deck around this, and the fact that Kroxa, every time you cast him normally, or he enters the battlefield normally, will be going to the graveyard, leads to some really cool effects that we can reuse throughout the game. Finally, we have the escape mechanic. So for a black, red, we can exile 5 other cards from your graveyard, and we can cast him for his escape cost. What does that mean? Well, he just comes onto the field, and because of the first line of text, he won't be sacrificed. But escape will be a last resort of this deck. Really, we want to be abusing his enter the battlefield effect, so there's many ways that we're going to be doing that. And first on the list, in at number 5, we have Geth's Grimoire, a 4-mana artifact that reads, whenever an opponent discards a card from his or her hand, you may draw a card. Absolutely fantastic. We want to be making our opponents discard cards, which Kroxa does fantastically, and for each one, we're going to be drawing a card. Really fantastic. We're going to be powering out tons of draw. Along these same lines, we've got cards like Dark Deal, which is a 3-mana sorcery that reads, each player discards all cards from his or her hand and draws that many cards -1. And also Michaeus the Wheel, which is a 3-mana 3/3 that you can pay 2, tap and sacrifice it. Each player discards his or her hand and then draws 7 cards. If we have Geth's Grimoire on the field, we're going to be drawing an astonishing amount of cards with both of them. And then, very similar to Geth's Grimoire, we have Tegrid, God of Fright, a 5-mana 4/5 with Menace. Absolutely fantastic stat line. Who's going to mess with something so menacing? And it reads, whenever an opponent sacrifices a non-token permanent or discards a permanent card, you may put that card from the graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. So if we're wheeling, we're going to be getting all these effects. Tegrid is a very kill-on-sight card, so the likelihood of her surviving is pretty slim, so get those effects in while you can. Which brings on to our 4th card. What could it be? It's Claim to Fame. Claim is a 1-mana black sorcery that reads, return target creature card with convert mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. Conveniently, Kroxa is 2 mana. Wonderful. Absolutely wonderful. Then we have Fame, which is a 2-mana sorcery with Aftermath, which means you can only cast it from your graveyard. Target creature gets +2% and gains haste until end of turn. So, worst case scenario, we've escaped Kroxa. We can now give him haste, and you can swing in for 8, and also, wow, they're discarding more cards. Brilliant. This is also a really good card with a few other cards. Insolent Neonate is a great little dude. You can sacrifice him to fill your graveyard and also draw some more cards. Let's have a look at some other cards that are very like this. Unearth, which is a 1-mana sorcery. Return target creature card with converted mana cost 3 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. And it has cycling. Woohoo! What a card. I do love me some cycling, name the channel after it. Best mechanic that's ever been printed. But this is another version of Claim, but you can get 3 CMC. What does that mean? Well, there's a couple of other creatures in the deck that are 3 CMC. We got Fleshbag Marauder, always a classic, big fat sack of jelly. Absolutely brilliant. He also sacrifices things. Very nice. Then we have Inscription of Ruin, which is 3 mana. Reanimate is covering it up here, sadly, but it is 3 mana, please believe me. And it has Kicker for 4 mana. Choose one. If the spell was kicked, choose any number instead. We can target opponent, discards 2 cards. Works well with the discard theme. Geth's Grimoire, drawing cards. Return target creature with converted mana cost 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. This is just claim. Very, very good. It's what we want to be doing. Brilliant. And then destroy target creature with converted mana cost 3 or less. So we can hit Azusa and Plague Rats. Stuff like that. You know, commander staples. Then there's Reanimate, a 1 mana black sorcery. Put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Use life equal to its converted mana cost. So if we're reanimating Kroxa, we take 2. If we are reanimating something bigger, there are a couple of big things in this deck. You know, you're paying for a couple of life, but at the end of the day, you're getting a massive beater onto the field. Absolutely great deal. Which takes us on to our third card, which is quite the spicy one. I don't think I'd see... I don't really see myself playing this in any other deck, but Consulate Dreadnought, which is a 1 mana 7/11. It's a convenience store for 1 mana. How could you turn that down? It's a vehicle and it has crew 6. Conveniently enough, Kroxa happens to be a 6/6. So if you cast him for his normal effect, or his normal mana cost that is, you pay 2, he enters the battlefield. Before you sacrifice him, you can crew this massive 1 mana thing and attack for 7. Probably the best thing you can be doing on turn 2 in Commander, in my personal opinion. But if we're claiming, you know, faming him back to the field, it can crew things over and over again every time we reanimate, which is pretty good. Along these same lines, we've got Smuggler's Copter, which is a 2 mana vehicle that has flying, and whenever Smuggler's Copter attacks or blocks, you may draw a card. If you do, discard a card. Crew 1. Kroxa can crew this 6 times. What a man, what a machine. And this thing fills our graveyard, which, if we eventually want to escape, is really quite good. Cultivator's Caravan costs 3 mana. Doretti is stepping on its mana cost there. Sorry about that. And it's a vehicle that has tap, add 1 mana of any mana. It makes mana. It's a mana rock. You want to play them in your deck. Occasionally, this can attack for 5. Really cool. And then we move on to Doretti, Scrap Savant. 4 mana for a Planeswalker. Sadly, you can't crew him. You can't have everything in life. But he has some cool effects that work well in this deck. +2, discard up to 2 cards? We discard the cards. It should be our opponents, but I'll let you off, Terry. Draw that many cards. Then is -2, sacrifice an artifact. If you do, return target artifact card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Works really well with our mana rocks. Maybe you have some mana rocks that sack themselves. Can bring them back by sacrificing one of our miscellaneous artifacts. And then his ultimate is nonsense. We're not really interested. Which brings us on to number 2. And this is a great card. Absolutely wonderful enchantment. It's not a sorcery. It'd be pretty bad as a sorcery. But as an enchantment, it's fantastic. Dawn of the Dead. 5 mana. And a lot of black mana it is too. I love the old frame with all those symbols up at the top. Up there. Looks absolutely fantastic. At the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life. Now that's the reason we're playing the card. Whew, wonderful. But the rest of it is okay as well. At the beginning of your upkeep, you may return target creature card from your graveyard to play. That creature gains haste until end of turn. Remove it from the game at end of turn. The important thing about this is that the exile clause is only at end of turn. If it were to leave the battlefield for any other reason, say maybe Kroxa sacrifices himself, it stays in your graveyard. So, every single turn, we can Kroxa them. Bring it back, boom. For free. Well, for 1 life, but who's really counting? Absolutely fantastic and works very well with a lot of cards in our deck. Fleshbag Marauder being one. Similar to this, we have Sheoldred, Whispering one. who's a 7 mana 6/6. Michaeus is now covering him up. These cards, man, you've got to deal with them. It's got Swamp Walk, and at the beginning of your upkeep, return target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Exactly the same sort of effect. We can keep bringing Kroxa back. Every turn, we've got this effect. It's brilliant. Then we've got Michaeus the Unhallowed, who works on a slightly different basis. He gives all of our non-human creatures Undying. So, when our Kroxa enters the battlefield, he'll die, but then he'll get Undying, come back with a +1/+1 counter, and he'll go to the graveyard then. So we get 2 triggers off of him. Excellent. And if you happen to find a way to give him Persist, it's four little Kroxa effects there in one turn. Absolutely great. And then we've got Plague Crafter. A great card. I keep talking about Fleshbag Marauder, but this is just a better version of it. Except with Michaeus, because it's a human. Anyway, Plague Crafter reads, when he enters the battlefield, each player sacrifices a creature or planeswalker. Each player who can't discards a card. You're going to get some value off this, and if you've got Tegrid on the field, whew, it's going to be good. Plague Crafter, wonderful card. And it's a 3/2. Why have they given it an extra toughness compared with old Fleshy Bag? I really don't know. Which brings us on to our number 1 card. And it's quite the card. It's... I wouldn't say it's the best card in the deck, really, but it's the most fun. And it's Endless Whispers. Endless Whispers. Which is a 4-mana enchantment. Each creature has, when this creature is put into a graveyard from play, choose target opponent. That player puts this creature card from the graveyard into play under his or her control at end of turn. So, what can we do with this? Well, if we've got Kroxa going around, yes, we will be discarding cards, because it ends under our control, and we give it to someone, then they have that effect, does it? But we should have accrued quite a bit of value by then, maybe Kroxa them a couple of times. They've not got cards in their hand, but we do. So, we won't be getting bolted each time for this. This also works with Fleshbag Marauder and Plague Crafter. We just pass them around and sacrificing them. Works the best with Kroxa because with a Fleshbag Marauder sort of effect, you could sacrifice a different creature, which ends the loop. But with Kroxa, he always sacrifices himself, which is wonderful. So what other cards work on a similar axis to this? So, Phage the Untouchable is a 7-mana 4/4 Magrim, get out of the way, that reads, when Phage the Untouchable enters the battlefield, if you didn't cast it from your hand, you lose the game. So, if you cast Phage, from your hand, don't cast it from anywhere else. It's a bad luck on everything. But you can sacrifice it and then give it away with Endless Whispers. And your opponent loses the game on the spot because they've not cast lovely little Phage. Phage also has a couple more lines of text. Whenever it deals combat damage to a creature, destroy a creature, it can't be regenerated. And Magrim is blocking the best part. Whenever Phage deals combat damage to a player, that player loses the game. Or the GA, whichever comes first. Then we've got Magrim, an excellent little enchantment. When an opponent discards a card, Magrim deals 2 damage to that player. So if we're passing Kroxa around over and over again, our opponents are going to be just cards flying everywhere. So as well as taking the 3 from the Kroxa trigger, they'll also be taking 2 from Magrim. Then we've got Plague Reaver, a 3-mana 6/5. Quite big, not as big as Kroxa, but still pretty decent. At the beginning of your end step, sacrifice each other creature you control. Okay, you don't want that, but discard 2 cards, sacrifice Plague Reaver, choose target opponent, return Plague Reaver to the battlefield under that player's control at the beginning of their next upkeep. Very similar to the effect of Endless Whisper. You can pass it around, party, but it's not as good, and you will be discarding a lot of cards to this effect. But, your opponents, they'll be, board wiping themselves potentially. Pretty damn cool. And with that, that is all the cards I have to show you. The deck is really cool. It's really fun. And it's not that fun to play against. But who really cares about that? I'm having fun. That's the main thing. Thank you very much for watching. And if you'd like to subscribe, well, I really won't stop you. I have nothing against the fact you might want to subscribe. I'm going to be releasing lots more content like that. And yeah. Thank you very much for watching. And goodbye.